We're live. All right. Thanks everyone for coming to another ProductTank Wellington. So tonight we've got 4 speakers for you who are going to share some of the tools of their trade. So they're actually not anything like the tools I thought they were going to come up with. So I reached out to see who'd be interested in talking on this topic after Liam introduced the idea to me. And I thought people would be, my road mapping tool, so this is template, this is Canvas. And they've all chosen very different topics, which are all just as interesting. And so hopefully you pick up something that you can take away and use in your own day-to-day lives or encourage the product people you work with to use. And so they've each got about 10 minutes, so we're all going to be timekeepers. So I'm going to try and kick them off after 8 to 10 minutes. And if I forget, then we can all this is the symbol. So we'll make sure that we try and keep within an hour, maybe 50 minutes is what we're aiming for. So I'm going to get off stage. Andrew is our first speaker, Andrew Phillips. And so I'm going to bring Andrew up on the screen, on the stage, and he's going to lead the show. So Andrew, thank you very much.
Cool. My wife is here, so if you need to yell at me to get off the stage, I'm sure she'll enjoy that. My name is Andrew Phillips. I am a senior product manager at Reveal. So Reveal are utility surveyors that existed for about 10 years or so in that space. So utility surveyors, for those of you who don't know, use geophysical techniques to help engineers and contractors understand where stuff is under the ground, so pipes, water mains. Sorry, I should stand next to that. It's a real sort of boots on the ground, high vis vest kind of a business. If you have wandered around Wellington recently and seen spray painted letters and numbers all over the place, that's us. And they've just moved into the software space for the first time in their 10 years. So that's what's brought me to be working there. We're basically trying to use technology to make the services a bit more accessible. So I'm going to have a chat to you about building a shared understanding using a product manifesto. Let me see if this works. Great. I'm going to take you through 3 examples. So, of course, Reveal, I just touched on building software for the first time. BNZ, probably a brand that most of you be familiar with, one of the bigger banks in the country, and Salary Finance, which is a fintech startup that I work for in the UK, going through massive growth in the time that I was there. So hopefully 3 quite different applications that will, maybe one of them resonates and you get something from this. That is not the right button. That one is. So Salary Finance, just to get it out of the way, in the New Zealand market, it sounds like a payday lender. We're definitely not a payday lender. Kind of established a brand of being the anti-payday lender. So we were using salary deduction technology to help people basically improve their financial well-being. So genuinely cool product, doing good stuff, not selling payday loans. It was founded by a group of ex-consultants. So the sort of shipping value out of our technology team to our customers pretty regularly. We were all right at that part of it. And then we had a product team that was split sort of in half. So there was 3 senior product managers, including myself and a head of product. And then all the other product people we hired were in their first product role. So we spent a lot of time talking a good product game, but we wanted to make sure that we walked a good product game. So our goal was to sort of establish a set of principles that we all wanted to live by, but then take those sort of a layer deeper and talk about what they meant in practice. So setting some standards and expectations that we could hold ourselves to. So we went about brainstorming and we came up with this set of principles. So we know our customers better than anyone. So that was kind of an aspiration of us. We figured if we were going to be pontificating about how we should be doing things for our customers, we should actually get to talk to some of them. So we broke into pods of 3 people within the team, and we committed that we were all going to bring back at least a couple of hours of customer research every fortnight to the group. We also made the effort to spend at least an hour a week working with our customer services team, answering customer queries, working through their sort of ops and admin processes, because a lot of our time was spent building efficiency for them. So just trying to build that real empathy for them. We value the opportunity to join sales meetings. So any of you who've worked in a product company that has salespeople, I'm sure there's a few bones of contention there. So we were no different. We thought that they missold the product and didn't understand how it worked. They thought that we shipped none of the things that they suggested. So again, this was kind of along the lines of getting to know our customers. So every time there was an opportunity to go to a sales meeting, or we were asked to join a sales meeting, we said we would commit to doing that. And again, it got us in front of customers, seeing how it was being sold, and actually seeing some of the barriers that the customers would put up to signing up for the product. Data over opinions. So we had tools like Google Optimize and Google Analytics and the like, and sort of B2C online funnel. There were lots of ideas for how we improved that. We didn't care if the idea came from the CEO or the shop floor. If we had data, we would use that to decide whether we put something into production or not. So where we could, we would test things, and hopefully user testing, customer-facing features, fairly self-explanatory. So BNZ, complete other end of the spectrum. I joined the lending technology team there. The lending technology team at BNZ was bigger than all of salary finance when I joined. We had lots of the challenges that you have at a big corporate institution, right? Legacy systems, piles of tech debt. So one of the teams I looked after were responsible for all the business lending technology, and we were very siloed from the business side and technology side. Our goals weren't aligned, basically. We were working to a different set of metrics to what the business was. So it wasn't exactly criteria for great success. We were always sort of in a bit of tension there. But the business lending team were drowning in this tech debt and customer support. They had real opportunity to ship value to their customers, but just couldn't ever get to it. So this need came about to hire a new team. My business colleagues were quite keen for that team to work only on brand new features. And I had a bit of a job to sort of sell them on that not being the best way to get value for the customers over the long run. And ultimately, the people who were shipping those new features to customers were going to be the ones supporting them anyway. So we should set up with that mindset, DevOps and agile management of our backlogs in mind. So before I went about doing the hiring, I wanted to get us on the same page as that. So product manifesto again. So I took time to sit down with them and understand what the business were hoping to achieve. And we basically baked their goals and our goals in together to make sure that they understood why keeping technology systems up to date and online was important, but also that we understood getting value to the customer and to the business. We were in a real project to product kind of mindset, right? Someone joked with me at one point saying that, why was lending ever run as a project at a bank, right? There was never going to be a day in which lending was done at a bank, right? That's how we made money. So we wanted to move into a mindset of the technology teams are managing a product. And again, just understanding what that looked like in practice. And then we wanted cross-functional teams. The business had huge amounts of knowledge about their products and their customers. And so we wanted to bring them in and not treat them as sort of a stakeholder to manage at arm's length. So getting this written down in the manifesto, taking their input, and gave us a framework to kind of build the team out from there. And I'm sure Lucy is online. The product owner that we hired was then able to take that and sort of, she used it to build a structure for what a proper empowered product team would look like, that with clear goals and outcomes, they could be left to prioritize the backlog largely to their own devices. So Reveal has probably been the most unique experience of my career. As I said, primarily a business that's existed for 10 years. In the industry, they're really highly regarded, all the engineers and contractors I go and talk to. The brand has sort of a real cream of the crop reputation. But yeah, I, as you can probably see, am not the kind of guy who gets his hands dirty very often. So going and working with people who are out in the field and in the rain, and that kind of business has been quite foreign to me. On the flip side, the software thing is quite new to them. So before I joined, our senior leadership team had kind of committed to delivering a product in market by the 31st of March that could support 3 customers. So my colleague Mark drew up the Reveal Twin V1.0 Manifesto. So Reveal Twin is our working name for our product. And again, to try and explain to our board that whilst they might want a plan, it's kind of hard to have a plan for a product you haven't defined yet, right? So we had a bunch of assumptions that we needed to validate, general idea of what the product could look like. But yeah, we were building a product. We weren't working on a project where we had a finite deadline, right? This is going to be enduring over the long term. So one of the principles that Mark got across in this document was product, not project. Inspect and adapt. Again, we didn't know everything when we started building this product. So we were going to work in iterations, look back at what we'd learned, and change our approach based on that feedback loop. Transparency and accountability. So anyone who wanted to log into the software would be given that login to the software. Our backlogs were public. We ran fortnightly. We run fortnightly sprint reviews that anyone's welcome to join. And so again, just showing that whilst it gave the appearance that we might be writing our own rules, we were open to everyone coming and looking and seeing the progress that we were making through building that product. And it kind of gave our board a real sense of trust that the alternative to a plan in the Gantt chart wasn't going to be complete chaos. I'm getting the time wave, so I will move to the end. So advice, if you're going to go and have a crack at this, get clear on what your problem is, right? Like, what are you wanting this document to do? It's very hard to make a plan for moving forward if you don't have a shared reality. Write it down and come back to it. So make sure that it's a living document. It's not a one and done kind of thing. It's something you can refer back to and hold yourself accountable to. And establish the principles that you want to live by, and focus on the things that you want to achieve together, but try and keep it to 1 or 2 at a time. I probably don't have time for questions, so I'll hand on to Nori.
Here. Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Nori Ape. I'm a digital product manager at BCITO, and I'm also a transformation program lead at Te. So yes, I have a busy life. And so today we're just going to give a quick talk. I am saying quick because my team often complain when I talk a lot. So I'm really looking forward to seeing a hand signal to tell me to shut up at 2 minutes. So just a bit of a background on myself and why I'm kind of talking about storytelling today. Obviously, if you're in product, storytelling is a challenge that you have to do. I often will go from meetings with governance board members right down to former tradies who happen to work for BCITO and train apprentices. So it's a bit of a context switch. And I often struggle thinking about, well, flip, how do I explain integration to a bunch of tradies who know how to build a house and it's safe for 50 years? And I've had some really good analogies that have come in my 3 years at BCITO. So a bit of background on myself. Yes, I am an Auckland Blues fan. I'm quite proud of it. I get a lot of crap for it. Here's some of my digital team that I work with, and one of the legends at BCITO who is a former submariner for the South African Navy, who loves to tell a good story for about an hour every time I talk to him, which is once a week. And obviously, I work in tech. I'm actually not qualified to work in tech. I'm just a really good storyteller, and that's how I got this job. My background is actually foreign policy, so it really helps when I'm negotiating with different humans. So I guess what I want to talk about is storytelling isn't easy, and it's a skill. You've got to learn it. Just like when you're working with your delivery teams, you've really got to iterate your stories and start simple, tweak, and enhance as you go. I often wonder why some of my stories really tanked. And what I'll be going through today is just a framing of a couple of examples using the overarching framework. So you can take photos, but this is also going to come out as a slide deck. I went to a workshop at Design Thinking Academy, which is brilliant, great team. And it's really a good way to frame how you tell your story. And the challenge we had, which I hope you get to try yourself, is tell your own story in 2 minutes flat, which is quite hard, and I'll try to do it, but I'll be looking for my signals to say I've got 2 minutes left. So, as with most good stories, you really have a beginning, how things are, you set the scene. Some massive event happens where you either help the hero or the soon-to-be hero turn into a hero, and then they kind of overcome the challenge, and then things are different. You're in a new world. And that's a really good way to understand, humans understand patterns. So we're looking for what is that overarching narrative to understand the beginning, the middle, and the end. And as I go through, I'll actually use a couple of examples that relate to myself, because it's just easier that way. One of the more easier tools that I found to use, and this is just something I did this year, so this is pretty fresh, which is why I wanted to share it. Again, beginning, middle, and you're thinking about who's my audience, what is the problem, what is the thing that I'm talking about that is going to help them, and how do I translate it in a language that they understand. So obviously, if you're talking to a bunch of former tradies, I'm not going to use jargon like integration. I'm going to say that's a pipeline of information. That's what APIs do. So I avoid jargon where possible, and then obviously it gives you that after. And it helps me in terms of when I have to go pitch for money. And it's helped me really in particular in terms of, well, to the extent that my team often, if they want to poach somebody from another company, will ask me to come into the job interview and pitch the company I work for. And 9 times out of 10, that person comes to work for us, which is great for me, not necessarily for everyone else. So I'm going to go through a couple of quick stories to give you that example. Again, using myself, and in particular, my journey in product. So this is a burn down chart of one of my first teams. It looks pretty impressive. What this picture reflects is how my team saw me. Build it now, build it within the iteration. And what, as business product people, we tend to kind of focus initially in the first kind of role. We're looking at, oh shoot, what are my metrics? My metrics and my output is my measurement of success when you're first in that product role. And it is, which we go a bit further, it is the lie. Second part is, the little part is me discovering the outcomes are what matter, not the measurement. That is the true measurement. These are 2 teams that I had to manage in a large transformation program. There were 45 individuals that I managed, which was the entire enterprise design team. So herding a bunch of 45 cats, which is literally my job title that I gave myself during that period of my life. And it's really pushing humans to get outputs or the outcome, which is enterprise design, documentation, privacy, and all that. So it's messy, it works, but it's really that transition to a different type of product person. And this is kind of the bit that I struggled with, and I still struggle with it, which is explaining to all the humans I work with the double diamond and helping them understand it is not a big 4 fallacy. It is literally just the way that we work, and it helps you save money. So often I have a fortnightly demo to, there's 1,500 staff in the division that I belong to. I have to have this in every single slide every fortnight to explain, we are here, we are here. And that helps them understand so they're not kind of freaking out why the rest of the nerds in my team are talking lots of jargon, because this is the plain English part that they understand. And then obviously that's really the push away from different types of metrics. And one of the big kind of things is like, we use data. Now I use a lot of data in terms of telling the story as to why we should spend money in a particular way. What is the return on investment? If you're going to spend $1 million, is there going to be an increase in signups? Are you going to reduce the effort to process or service a particular customer? And my team, I particularly push a focus on product operations. So I work hand in hand with my business. Sometimes they rip in the face. Sometimes I do the same to them. But it's a relationship that works, and we kind of work on it over time. And so that's really kind of myself. The second part, which I'm going to go through, is a story which may be a bit traumatic for some of you. And I've warned a couple of speakers already, so they'll be okay when I share it. So And the reason I say this one, in 2011, it's 24 years since the All Blacks have won the Rugby World Cup. So the first and second time that they win is in Eden Park. And what they did in the World Cup prior was, why did we lose? Why did we suck like crap? We've got the world's top team. What they found is they paired up with a bunch of data geeks and figured out that if they did an algorithm that calculated the line out throw, they'd actually win the line out 70 to 85% of the time. That was the difference. And they could actually forecast across all of the other countries' teams what lineup call they were going to make. That ended up being the difference as to why they won. So you see the company that did this, it's a really good company. They work for Spark. The name escapes me at the moment, but in effect, in the lead up to that World Cup and in that World Cup, you saw a bunch of data scientists in the coaching hub, crunching numbers in real time, saying that's the one. He's going to pick that one. He's going to win that one. Now the next one might be even more traumatic. So I brought this one up because it has been 24 years since an overseas team, the Irish team, won, or the All Blacks lost a series on home ground. So easy to remember number because they're both 24. That's pretty nice and easy. But what you notice here is the makeup of the teams are different. The overseas teams have evolved. They are better teams. They've iterated better than we are. Not to say they're not the worst team in the world, but yeah. So they've done really well. So I guess this is why I'm really good at running. I don't have too much more to talk about because what I've really recapped on today is a couple of stories. One is my journey into tech and product. The second part is how you can frame your own kind of story itself. And the third one's a couple of traumatic examples using the All Blacks. The last one is, I just like this because I like Finding Nemo. Did I finish on time?
Yeah, amazing. Even early, you can stand up there.
Oh, okay. Right. I don't think.
Or you can transition.
I can. I'll check if there's no questions I can talk afterwards, otherwise I'll be here forever. No?
Question. Save them up later. Thank you. Put it in there. Big one. G'day everyone, I'm Liam O'Neill, Senior Product Manager at Total Learning. A couple of stories about me. I've never had a cup of coffee in my life. I just never got around to it. I got 2 kids under 4, probably would be something to start.
Yay.
I once performed in a talent show where the guest judge was Peter Andre. Show of hands, who knows who Peter Andre is? Oh, this is good, this is good. Turns out my talents were a little bit too mysterious because I got last. And this here is the cliff that taught me the benefit of discovery. I thought you could jump from the top of that and make it to the water. Didn't do enough discovery, gave it a crack. Turns out you can't. 3 months in hospital definitely taught me, do your discovery, guys, do your discovery. So I just thought I'd talk to you about a couple of tools that I find are super helpful as a product manager. First one being the financial model. Not the sexiest topic, but I find it super, super important. And the next one being the written narrative. I warn you, neither one of these is easy. This is not something you can do in an hour or two. This is going to take weeks of effort. But hopefully by the end of this, I want to convince you that it's worth taking weeks of effort to do both of these. Let's start off with a financial model. I love this quote. So it's going to be wrong, but it's still going to be helpful. So you're not going to be able to predict exactly how much money you're going to make for your company, but you're going to be able to have a really good crack at mapping out a potential future. And if you keep putting more effort into your assumptions that lead to that future has a better chance of coming true than if you just wing it. So a bit of background, I'm at Total Learning. We make talent management software, and our kind of mission is to empower people to do their best work. Not very well known. We're founded here in Wellington, been around for 11 or 12 years. We've got 19 million people around the world using our software in 47 countries, which is pretty cool. And we've got a really interesting model where we focus on developing really cool code. we ship that code to our sales partners around the world. They actually host the code, and they provide kind of like a SaaS version of our software, and then they sell it on. So it's an interesting model. I've been brought in to disrupt that model a little bit. So I'm looking at ways that we could serve a portion of our partners, maybe some other partners, in ways where we take on the typical responsibilities that all of your companies no doubt do. So hosting the code, looking after the version upgrades, and providing that technical support. So when I started, I was very interested as to whether or not there was enough value in this role of mine to justify my time and to justify the time of the rather expensive team of cloud engineers I was pulling together. So a financial model was my go-to move. So map out exactly what all the revenue looks like based on all the assumptions we've made in terms of sales and the average price we're going to sell a solution for. And that told me, yeah, this is definitely worth a go. There's enough value here to justify the effort. And that just gives you a big confidence boost. Second thing, I got thrown a bit of a curveball question pretty early, and that was around, hey, should you spend a lot of your time exploring the AWS costs? So should that be the primary thing the team does for the next couple of months? Because anyone who works with AWS, that's some gnarly stuff to model. But because I've already modeled out the hosting cost in our financial model, I was able to quickly say, hey guys, to be honest, there's not a huge amount of money to be saved here. Even if we optimize by 50%, we could still make more money by just gaining a few more customers. So I was able to say, no, there's other priorities here. Let's just crack on with gaining some sales. So if I didn't have a financial model, I wouldn't have been able to make that call. Would have spent a couple of months doing that probably pointless work. So I reckon financial models are worth it because they give you confidence. So it's the confidence to sell your value. You're saying, you bring me on board, I'm working with the team, we're going to deliver this. You're putting a dollar number on it. Businesses speak in dollars. It also gives you agility. So if something pops up, and things always pop up, the example with our team is we had 2 cloud engineers, realized 2 is not enough, we need at least 4. You need to be able to quickly assess, can we justify this? Like, what's this going to do to our business case? If you've built out your financial model, that's a simple change of a 2 to a 4. You can still see it's profitable, all is well, crack on. And finally, it gives you focus. I'm not sure about your organization, but we tend to compete for some resource. So it might be marketing team resource or even just executive focus. You might have been sharing some engineering resource. If you're throwing around a nice profit number, you're going to get the attention, particularly if the other teams aren't making as much noise about the value they can deliver. So if you've got a financial model, you know what your team's worth, you tell that story, then you're going to get the focus and the resources you need. And it's only 3 steps. First step, bake some cookies. Take the cookies to your finance team. Make friends with this team. This team is very important. And they'll be stoked. They like cookies. And they like to get to know you, and they like to know what you're doing with your product. So get them to help you set up the model. Each finance team likes to operate slightly differently. It's kind of pointless you developing a model and then just trying to convince them that it's okay. It's a lot easier to get them to develop the model and you make use of it. You'll need them to validate it later as well. No one's going to take it seriously until the finance team sign it off. So once they've finished all the cookies and they've helped you out, sit there, chuckle your details in. So all of your costs, all of your revenues should spit out a nice profit number. Hopefully that's positive. And then go out and tell stories. Like I sit down with my profit model and I'll literally walk through the model. It's an awesome tool to really clearly communicate what all your assumptions are, what are the important things, what are the non-important things. And people love jumping on and they tweak different numbers and get a good sense of what's really important with your product. If you don't have a finance team, I've included a couple of links. So this one here is a cool P&L model. It's free. You could use that one. Or McKinsey have a cool tool for point-in-time decisions. It's called the issue tree. It allows you to really quickly do a bit of a diagram up on a whiteboard. You can figure out what's important. So check them out. Second tool, Marty Kagan quote. You're not allowed to do a talk unless you get Marty Kagan quote in there somewhere. So this is Marty Kagan's favorite coaching tool. So getting product managers to write down their strategy. It's really easy to come up with a PowerPoint and you just kind of wing it. I'm doing it right now. Seems to be going okay. But it's a lot harder to write your strategy down. Using full narrative story, you can't hide. If it's logical and if you've thought about anything, it comes across. If you've just tried to wing it, it comes across. But word of warning, Jeff Bezos, they're not easy to do. So you'll write it, you'll rewrite it, someone else will have a look at it, they'll tell you it's terrible, they'll have a go at writing it, you'll review it, someone else reviews, it takes weeks. But it's definitely worth it, and hopefully I'll convince you why. So coming back to Totara, yeah, when I joined, this idea of the managed SaaS had been around since 2011. So it had become a sentient being in the absence of a strategy. Everyone I talked to had an entirely different idea of what it meant. So everyone's kind of nodding their heads like, managed SaaS, yes. And literally talking about an entirely different strategy. So my first challenge was trying to gather that together. So what do we actually mean by managed SaaS? What am I going to focus on? I've got a reasonably small team here. We can only achieve so much. We need to get aligned. So I used the Amazon 6-pager. It's a cool tool. It's a little bit scary sometimes people read, but it's 6 solid pages of text. It tells your story. So it forces you to do your homework because you're going to write this 6 solid pages of text. You need to be able to tell a story in there. You need to understand every single element about your product, which you should be doing anyway. It prepares you, right? Because you're going through this process of writing, you're spotting gaps, your colleagues are spotting gaps, give it to your partner, give it to your kids, someone's going to spot the gaps. And the good thing about that is that prevents your senior leadership spotting the gaps when you're standing up in front of them giving your presentation. And finally, it helps with alignment. I haven't fully landed this yet at Totara. It's still a work in progress, but it certainly helps start to gather everyone's thinking as to what do we actually mean here. So the Amazon approach is they'll actually start a meeting where the first 20 minutes of a 1-hour meeting is silently reading the 6-pager. So it's a little bit weird. I tried it. It was weird. But I think the company needs to get used to it a little more. It turned into a competition between the exec team who could read it first. It wasn't quite what I was after. But yeah, I think I'm going to try it again. I'm sure it will work. But the idea is you spend that 20 minutes making sure everyone's on the same page. Once everyone's on the same page, you can have a logical discussion about what you want to do. Rather than if you send a pre-read or something, half the people won't read it. They'll just pretend they read it. And then people aren't actually on the same page and they're arguing about apples and oranges without even realizing it. So again, 3-step process. First, have a crack. So write down, what is your vision? Why is it valuable? And what's your strategy for achieving that vision? And then get as many people as you possibly can to review it. Rip it to pieces and improve it until it tells a really consistent story that represents what you're trying to achieve with your product. And then share it. Share it with everyone. The fact that it's 6 pages of solid text does scare some people off. Nana, if you're watching, you admitted that to me today. You didn't even read it. But other people do. The architects, Dave, you'll be watching this later. You did read it. And you said it was awesome. So that's cool. And it's also a really cool point in time description. Like it's almost like a time capsule of the collective thinking of the organization at that particular time. So 6 months later, when you're wondering, why on earth did we do that? That's nuts. You can look back and go, we all agreed that was a good idea at the time. We didn't realize this. So it's kind of a nice reference tool as well. So this is a cool article, explains how to do the Amazon 6-pager. And then that's more for like an existing product if you're trying to tell a big story about how your product's kind of going for that period of time. If you're doing a brand new thing, then Marty Kagan's got that press release where you kind of write a fake press release. And that's kind of a cool way to visualize how a new thing might work. And that's me. Any questions?
Would you take that alignment step when you're taking that first crack? Or do you think it's something that you need to work on and then present?
So if in terms of by alignment, you mean like the kind of the pre-read idea where you get everyone on the same page?
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's like a pre-read where people are involved in creating that thing that they're then going to read.
Yeah, I would go with that. I like the pre-read, definitely. Yeah, so I think I did 3, maybe 4 weeks of like intense work to get that 6-pager that Nana didn't even read.
Just you locked away in the basement just going for it.
Nah, so I kind of had a crack. Maybe it was the first week was me cracking it by myself. I was like pulling a lot of data, processing a lot of information, trying to turn it into a reasonably structured story. Gave it to someone else. They're like, this doesn't make sense. You're waffling there. Put that in appendices and bounce around. So I had 4 or 5 people really help me structure it. And then I took it in. It was the first time we'd done a pre-read before. So it was a big switch for the exec team. So someone else went in after me and they said it was a bit better. So I think it's something we need to get used to as a company. But I definitely see the value and I think it's worth. And if someone tries it out, you let me know how it goes as well. Yeah, I'm super interested. See if you do slightly better than me. But I'm going to get there. Keep trying.
Did you do any prep prior to that meeting to kind of let them know that we're doing it?
I did. It was weird because usually when you're sitting at the meeting, you're like, hey, I'm going to send you a pre-read. But instead I'm like, hey, we're going to do this thing where you spend 20 minutes reading. And I just got deathly silent. So I was expecting these people to come there like, well, that's weird. But as I said, it turned into this like reading competition. So I was like, I'm finished. 10 minutes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we'll keep working on that. But no, I think that's the beauty of it. Like you're not trusting that people have read it beforehand. They read it there and then. And once you get used to using that muscle, I think it'll be a really useful thing to do. Sure.
Does the process change when you're doing, say, discovery work or when you're kind of iterating a product? Like, does the process still change?
Yeah. So the question there was, does the process change if you're in your kind of discovery phase or if you're actually like delivering your product? And yeah, that's a good question. I would say that the 6-pager probably works better when you're in that delivery phase because you can tell a bigger story. I reckon the Marty Kagan press release is probably a better shout for discovery because you're just trying to paint a potential picture and see how it sticks. If people kind of go, oh, that doesn't fit with that strategy, then kind of back away. And a Marty Kagan press release probably takes more like a few days to do. Like, I don't think it's as big. It's like a 1-pager. I'll maybe call it a week, whereas a 6-pager is going to take you a couple of weeks. Easy, yeah. So I'd give that a crack. I haven't tried the press release myself yet. So again, if you try it, let me know how it goes. It looks like a good one. Cool. All right, we've still got 1 speaker to go, so I might hand over to Para.
Awesome. I've had 1 glass of wine and I've got a stand-up comedy mic, so I need to remind myself that I'm here to talk about product, not humor you. Hi, everyone on the call as well. I'm Para, I'm GM Product at Xero. I've been with Xero for 8.5 years and quite fortunate to grow with the company and also grow the tax products into few markets, let's say 6 to 7 markets. So today I'm really interested to talk to you about my journey and more importantly, how you can learn from some of my tools to use that I use for product market fit. I'll start with one of my experience, which didn't quite go so well. So a bit of a backstory here. So Xero was in the Australia, New Zealand, UK, and we are moving into Singapore. And the backstory is, hi team, from the business, hi team, we are in Singapore. Singapore is a beachhead to Asia's growth. No tax equals no conversation with accountants and equals no growth. Can we please deliver this initiative? So at this time, our product had kind of evolved quite a lot from our previous failures that we have moved into more product-centric teams. We did have dual track, we spoke to customers, we had data-informed decisions, pretty evolved in that sense. So it was awesome. But it took us a while. So we're going back and forth, product, design, engineering, market, awesome. And after like a long time, let's say 2 years, we have it. We have the answer. We have an amazing tax experience in Singapore. It's bee's knees. It's going to attract our small businesses and their advisors. Who wouldn't want to use it? What do you think went wrong here? Anyone?
So the assumption that no tax equals no.
Yeah, I mean, it's an accounting software. So to some degree that it is true. You need to have a tax and an accounting software. Otherwise, it becomes a joke. But what really went wrong here was the product was searching for a market. We assumed, big fish in a small pond in New Zealand. Awesome, let's go into a new market. You're going to build a brand. You're going to build a product. Everyone's going to love it. And they'll just use the product assets the way they use it in New Zealand. Wasn't quite the way it went, In fact, one of the big failures for us was the market that uses GST was above certain 1 million threshold, and Xero's market was 5% of that, was pretty disastrous. But people who used it loved it. But is it really the market that we wanted to grow? Perhaps not. I mean, we didn't do that sort of analysis there. So that enters, this is where Brian Balfour's 4 Fits framework, one of my favorite tools for product market fit, enters. And it really starts with product market fit. Doesn't actually start with product. It starts with market. Who is your customer? Who is your market? What's the size of the market? What's the market segment? What are the prospects? What are the motivations for a customer to use your product? What's the competition like? So starting with the market first, and then thinking about product. What's the product that fits those market needs, as opposed to starting with the product and then looking for the market. But that it sort of aligns to the channel in the sense, how are you going to reach your product to the masses? What's going to be your growth channel? Is it going to be, in the case of Xero, it was accountants was our primary channel. So it's our direct customers, which was our secondary channel. And then, of course, how are you going to make money out of it? Model or commercial is like, how are you going to make money out of it? Because you're not doing a nonprofit unless you're a nonprofit organization. You aren't. So how are you going to make money out of it? How are you going to price it? How are you going to package it? And it's not that we didn't think about it. We thought about it in silos. We thought about it as checklists. We were like so focused on product. Let's hammer this. Let's get the best product experience. And then when it came to channel, it was a checklist. Oh, yeah. We tick that. And it failed, right? It didn't fail in the sense that it was still a learning. But the fact that we didn't think of it as a system led us to that failure. And boy, and I was thinking, where did this guy go? Why didn't I know about this framework before? But ever since then, we had 4 markets after that. It's always been a big learning to start with the market. Now, the premises, as I said, start with the market, then the product, because product is the solution, it's not the problem. Mold your products to take advantage of the channel. Don't start with the channel and say, oh yeah, I've got a product that's mobile, it's a social media, let's do something. Quite often it happens, you start with social media, you come up with products that fits the social media. But it really mold your products to take advantage of the channel, because product is something that you control, and you can take advantage of that by molding the product. And think about how are you going to make money. Think about it. Quite often it's quite easy to get driven by customer and things like that. But it's so important to strike a balance between customer and the commercial outcome. And also, how are you going to create a fair exchange of value? By that I mean, if you're creating a product, if you're going to give away for free, people are still going to underestimate the value of your product. Either it's your product is too bad, or you're underestimating the value that you're offering. The fair exchange of value is pretty much, what the value you're offering. You are charging the product for the value that you offer. Be confident on that. Don't undersell the value that you're providing in your product. So how did I apply this in Xero's context? I guess like any product people here, translate that into questions. And as a GM, as a product manager, this always kind of reminds me to ask those difficult questions up front. I work with different functions, different regions, but nothing stops me from asking a question. There's no reason for me not to do my homework. So things like market segments, market trends, market research, you need to do the work. You can't have a product market fit without doing those homework. And same with customer needs, customer discovery, all the good things that you do as part of customer discovery and design and research, absolutely super important. And same as competition and competitive analysis. But then you move to product fit and try to understand what are your product hypotheses, what are your bets, what are the things that you think is going to be hooks to attract the target market with your product proof of concept. And then you think about time to market, because you could have an amazing idea, you could have a great bet, but it takes you 2 years to build that bet. So think about whether that's going to test out your value, or whether it would be more prudent to think about value slices and how you can slice it down to a smaller target segment of the market. So your market quite often gets represented as TAM. I've got 3 million businesses in Canada, so let's go there. Probably not. Your segment that you're looking for is probably 1% or less than 1% of the market. So don't kid yourself. We are all product people. I think we are all over-optimize or over-index the success of our product. But quite often it's important for us to take a step back and be realistic about the actual market that you have built out in your market against 6 reference customers. Think about your target segment who can help you prove the value for your product. And going back to the channel fit, again, what's your primary channel? Because quite often you get a product, And you're like, I'm going to go through mobile, I'm going to go through social media, I'm going to go through these, distributors. But the reality is, if you don't have one primary channel, you do an awesome job, but half-assed job with everything. So who's your primary channel? Who's going to bring you more customers? And how are you molding your products for your biggest channel to market? It's important to have secondary, but what is your primary? These are important questions to ask while you're thinking about product. And of course, commercial in terms of how you charge, when you charge. You might have a free product or trial product, or you might be on the freemium model. At what point would you decide value is enough? Now I'm going to charge them. And how much are you going to charge? Again, that's like doing your pricing research. What's the propensity to pay? Would customers actually pay you the money that you want? So all these things together makes a huge difference in the get-go of thinking about product market fit. Now, if you have to boil it down, quite often you get into this, oh my God, there's so much work, analysis paralysis will kick in. But reality is we start really small. You start with a small iteration and you grow up. To build out a proof of concept, you might not need an extensive market research or a whole tranche of money thrown into external market research and things like that. You really need to do your desk analysis. Or as you grow out, you might need more resources and more support. But the whole idea of product market fit is not linear. It doesn't start by releasing a bunch of features. It doesn't stop with that either. It's actually iterative. It grows, and and it's not something that is, it's an infinite sort of loop, because your market is always changing. So is your product, so is the channel, so is the competition. So that's the first tool, which I'm quite fascinated about. My second thing is, how does your product grow? There's one aspect of it is having product market fit. And the second aspect of it is how you grow your product. And I asked this question to quite a lot. This is quite a famous one of pilot metrics, right? So if you haven't used data at all, I think that's a good starting point, is how do you establish the foundations to make data-informed decisions. Well, the next best thing you can do is to think about the pilot metrics, or things like the growth funnel, which is of the acquisition, adoption, retention, and all of those good stuff. We use that for many years. But one of the things that we realized, and again with Brian Balfour and people like the knowledge curve, is that it's quite linear, and we quite rely on the marketing people to grow the market. And then the product comes in and say, we just take care of this bit here. And anything outside that is not in our control. It's quite a flawed way of thinking. And it also shows how siloed we are. And the bigger your company is, the bigger it becomes an organizational growing pain. So where we are today is kind of using or adopting one of Brian's tool called a growth loop. It starts like not linear. It is more continuous. It's more, how do you build a compounding growth? Simple input, set of action, and set of output. The input in this case is a new user or a returning user coming into your product. They take some actions, and because of taking those actions, they're motivated to reinvest and come back to the product again. So think of it like in terms of if a customer, let's just say as an example of review, new customer, they come in, they're happy, they go back and they recommend to someone else because, hey, I've had super awesome experience, my satisfaction has been extremely great, and they refer them to someone else. So then it becomes that one feeds the other. The output of the loop feeds the input of that growth. Now, how we applied that in the sort of zeros context, and quite a bit of here, is because at this point we had, we evolved from our foundation. We had a good foundation of experimentation, discovery, hypothesis-driven development. We also have cross-functional teams working together. So what we evolved here, and especially Zero, who makes money by we sell it to accountants. Accountants bring more of their clients. The more clients they bring, the more money we make. So it's more like a value-added resale loop. So in our case, we brought those loops together of sales loop and product loop. So in the sales loop, marketing team, they bring new leads, new accountants and bookkeepers into the mix, marketing and go-to-market teams. They sign up to a partner program. They trial with the pilot clients, especially if Zero is going into a new market. They don't wholly trust us and say, oh, take 100 clients of ours and put them on Zero. It doesn't happen that way. Trust happens over time. So does the sale. So in this case, they trial with pilot clients. They come into Canada. They're like, okay, there's a Canadian tax product. So I'm going to put one of my clients into Zero and see how Zero goes in Canada. So which then comes to sort of product loop in terms of a new customer onboarding into tax, or say they might be setting up and filing, which we measure that as an active sort of usage for us. And then we measure those sort of we improve experience by looking at leading indicators being satisfaction or the engagement of that user using our product, which then feeds into looking at the trialist conversion. Did we get a trialist customer? Did we get a free customer coming in? How did they actually help us grow a loop by bringing in more of their clients? So you can see how systemic it is. It's not working in silos. It is actually one feeding the other. And it has actually quite helped us in our thinking. And it's quite new. It's quite nascent. In fact, if Hella is watching, she is one of our first product managers who's trying to use this and adopt this in our space. It's quite nascent, but we are still making some real headwinds in this sort of thinking of growth loops instead of growth funnels. So things to think about. What's your top line growth metric? Quite often you have 100 metrics, but what is that one thing that actually matters to grow your business? What is that one thing? And also look for what are your leading indicators. When you're finding product market fit, it's never about growth at the start. It's about satisfaction. Do people actually like your software? Do people actually engage with your software? How do you measure that? So what are your leading indicators and how do you measure retention? So if these three things you have as a foundation, I think the rest will just follow. So yeah, that's it. Questions? I hope none of this went above. Cool. I think we are in time, so I'm the last person. So you could ask questions to any one of us. Cool.
All right, thanks a lot. So amazing. I definitely learned some stuff, and I'm glad that they didn't all just do roadmaps and canvases. So that was really, really good. Thank you, everyone, for sharing some of the stuff you've been doing. For those who are not online, are not here in person, or who are here in person, there's some nibbles and food coming and some extra drinks. Please hang around. And for those who are online, well, you should have come next time you come in person and bolster the numbers. But yeah, thanks everyone.